Welcome to the Sage Family Podcast,
where we explore natural, homeschooling, gentle parenting,
simple living, and family adventure.
I'm Rachel Rainbolt, the Sage Parenting Coach, coming to you from the Pacific Northwest, where I live wild and free in connection with my 3 wildlings and the Papa Bear in our fixer-upper on the beach. This is episode 30, and today I'm here with Elizabeth Willard Thames talking about intentional spending. Liz is the creator of the personal finance blog Frugalwoods and the book Meet the Frugalwoods. At the age of 32, she reached financial independence and left a successful career in Boston to create a more meaningful life on a 66-acre homestead in the woods of Vermont with her husband and their 2 young daughters. So join us around the campfire and let's get living the family life of our dreams. Shout out to our new patron, Taryn. As Sky likes to say, thanks for being awesome. If you are loving the Sage Family Podcast, you can become a part of it too through Patreon, where you can support these important conversations, help make this show great, and get rewards doing it. And thank you, Renee Plyler, for supporting the podcast by leaving a review on iTunes. Renee says the Sage Family Podcast is life-changing. I wish I could spend more time writing up a beautiful and whole review of this life-changing podcast, but the truth is, this podcast has given me so many great resources to dive deeper into that I simply can't prioritize writing a review right now. I have about 6 new books that just arrived in the mail that I want to just devour as quickly as I can. So in short, thank you, Rachel, for providing this inspiring and safe space for parents to evolve into our best selves. Thank you. Our adventure this week was the Life is Good Unschooling Conference. This was our 3rd year attending and is the highlight of the year for my 2 bigs. Though for the last 2 years, our little has hated it. He's just never been a fan of crowded indoor spaces. So this year we planned on my introverted husband and wildling babe having some fun adventures on their own around Vancouver, Washington, while I got some writing time in the hotel room and the bigs got to have their friendship and freedom extravaganza. You know I'm all about creatively honoring everyone's needs. Except we got there and Wes took off on his own, fully participating in all of the conference kid fun, making all of the friends and having a blast. But since we didn't really feel comfortable with him being completely independent, we just awkwardly socialized nearby wherever he happened to be. And isn't that so classic? Just when you think you've got it figured out, they move on to the next developmental stage and we're scrambling to get our bearings, trust, and adjust. The ultimate tag, the entrepreneur fair, the talent show, the filmmaking, the prom, the kids had a blast. If you want to see photos and videos of this adventure, then head on over to Sage Parenting on Instagram and follow along. Today, Elizabeth Willard Thames is joining me to share a conversation on intentional spending. I found Liz through Instagram, which led me to her blog, which led me to her book, all under the brand Frugalwoods, where she writes about how she uses intentional spending to create a life of meaning. I am so excited that you're here today, Liz, to help bring this financial piece to this very intentional lifestyle and relationship designing that we do here on this podcast. So why don't you tell us your story in your own words?
Sure. So right now I live in rural Vermont on a 66-acre homestead with my husband and our 2 little girls. We have a 15-month-old and a 3-year-old. So we are in the trenches of toddler parenting. So that's one part of my life. And my husband and I previously lived in Cambridge outside of Boston, and before that in Washington, D.C., and before that in New York City. And so we sort of did the city thing. We did the big East Coast city experience and decided it really was not for us. We didn't like the stress. We didn't like the pace. And what we really wanted was to live in nature. And so we came up with this plan to move to Vermont and to essentially create sort of an unconventional life that would more nearly fit the things that we value and that are important to us. And so in 2016, we moved from Cambridge out to Vermont. And so we call ourselves digital homesteaders. I don't know if that's a thing, but
I love that.
We're pointing it. We're going with it.
I'm using it.
So my husband and I both work from home via the internet. So we have fantastic internet. So we're able to do that for our incomes. And then we also work on our land. So we grow apples, plums, cherries. We just put in a blueberry patch. So there was a deer in there earlier. So we may not be growing blueberries, but so ideally, we're growing blueberries. We also were growing black raspberries, but there's a groundhog who's been like, I'm not kidding, eating the buds off.
Oh my gosh.
That. So we may not be growing black raspberries. So it's a really good thing that we're not trying to earn money from our land.
Right.
And we made maple syrup from our maple trees for the first time this year.
That sounds amazing.
Oh, it was so wonderful. So we feel so fortunate to be able to live this way.
Well, I can relate to so much in your story because I was born and raised in San Diego and my husband is from Honolulu, and they are both very expensive places to live. So we knew that if we ever wanted to really align our lifestyle with our values, we would have to do a little geo arbitrage to get there. So we moved up to the Pacific Northwest and bought this fixer-upper right on the Sound in nature. We wanted all the nature. At this point, we have a plum tree and all the blackberries, which we're actually fighting back so that we can have space for other edible things to grow.
We had to plow some of our blackberries under because they're so invasive.
Yes, so invasive. So it's been like a year of chainsawing and yeah, it's going to be amazing once we're there. Though, I mean, really, is it ever really like finished? I don't know if you ever really complete homesteading.
I don't think you do. Yes, we have. It's just this ongoing, it's a project. It's a lifetime of projects, which is what we wanted.
Yes, we want to like work with the land and work with our hands and work together. I love it. Yes, I agree with all those things. And I'm totally stealing digital homesteader. I mean, digital nomad is a thing. So why not digital homesteading?
I agree.
Okay, so I want to start with a little bit of some definition work here because I associate you with the word frugal. Though before you, I have to admit, I considered it an ugly word, and I'm sure I'm not alone on that. So can you help us understand what that word really means?
Absolutely. I am bringing frugal back. All right. So I know they're like, you talk about frugality, and then they kind of want to like leave the room.
I'm bringing frugal back.
That's exactly. Thank you. Yes. So that's what I'm doing. And for me, frugal really means spending money only on what matters to me and saving on everything else. So I feel like I have everything that I need and everything that I want, but I don't feel like I have to spend a lot in order to get it. And so it's really, for me, it's values-based spending. It's identifying what my highest and best priorities are, and then being very mindful with every dollar that I spend. So that doesn't mean penny pinching. That doesn't mean clipping coupons. I don't do either of those things. It's just a question of having a holistic mindset of being very financially careful and being financially stable, because I think that ultimately, if you want a life of simplicity and a life of peace, you need to have financial stability underlying all of it, because that is really what can enable you to then pursue all of these things that you want to be doing and things that you feel called to do, is if you have that basis of financial stability. So I like to say I help people with Personal Finance 101, how to organize your money and not freak out about the future.
Ooh, so much good in that. It's kind of, frugality really, it's kind of like financial minimalism, in where you're aligning your money with your values and investing in the stuff that doesn't matter and not investing in all of the crap that takes away from what matters.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about lifestyle. Reading your book and blog, I can definitely see how frugality is a value and a tool for your intentional lifestyle design. how can we use intentional spending to help close the gap between where we are and where we want to be?
That's a great question. If anybody has the answer for that one, I think, managing your money well is not going to solve all your problems, but it can solve a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's like, I think it's interesting because one of my close friends is a pastor, and, in her religious teachings, I find that a lot of what underlies some of the stress and the strain that people experience is financial discord.
Yeah.
It is the leading cause of divorce in the United States. It is a reason for people feeling less than. And it doesn't have to be. Managing your money is a lot easier than I think a lot of people realize. And this doesn't mean that you're going to be rich. It doesn't mean that you're going to be fabulously wealthy. It does not mean that you can spend money on everything that you want, but you can set yourself up for a secure future. And so I think aligning spending with that goal of simplicity is very in concert, and it's very symbiotic, because when you aren't buying extra things you don't need, things that clutter your life, you're giving yourself space and time and freedom. And ultimately, for me, the greatest resource is my time. And so the way in which I use my money really facilitates me using my time in the way that I want. So it's sort of, I come at it from a financial angle, but at the end of the day, it's really about being able to do what I want to do with my time.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question? I don't think it does, but
yeah. Yes, it absolutely does, in a very philosophical, roundabout way. Well, like in a practical sense, I mean, you would not have been able to move to this 66-acre homestead in Vermont had you not aligned your spending with your values and used your money as a tool to change the trajectory that you were on.
Right, absolutely. And, one of the reasons why I don't always focus so much on frugality is that you have to earn money in order to save it. And so I think it's very important that people are cognizant of all of the factors in this equation. There's income, there's expenses, and then there's time. And so depending on what your income is and what your expenses are, what the difference is between those two, you then look at the third variable of time. Okay, how much time is it going to take me to save what I need based on my current income and my current spending? And so you might look at those two things and think, wow, I am spending so much more than I need to be. Or you might think, my spending is great, I just need to earn more, and I need to diversify my income, or I need to look for a new job. So there's not one right answer to how you get to this end goal.
Yeah, I think I'm just like hoping that people can take away from this part of our conversation that if you are unhappy with where you are and you have this beautiful vision of where you want to go, like money is going to be, it's undoubtedly going to be a part of how you get from where you are to where you want to be. Like I work with people who, like, maybe you want to be a stay-at-home mom, maybe you want to have land, maybe you want to, there are so many different change the job that you spend your time working on. Whatever variables you want to change in your life, money can be a really powerful tool in making those changes and giving you the ability to make those changes.
Absolutely. And if you want, I can give you kind of the money 101 that I recommend. So this advice applies to most people in most situations. There's no financial advice that's going to apply across the board to everyone. It just doesn't work that way. But
no, I'm sorry. If it doesn't apply to everyone, the call's over. We're done.
Listen, we've already established. I'm sitting here trying to decide what to do about this groundhog who's eating my black raspberries. My office window looks right out on the black raspberries. He's just chowing down.
Oh my gosh, so rude.
Not a worry in the world. So rude. So if you're sitting there thinking, okay, they're talking about money, I don't even like to think about my money, there are some steps that you can take on your own that you can do to really put yourself in a better position. So the first thing is to pull all of your information together. So figure out where all of your different accounts are, checking account, saving account, everything that you have. put it in a spreadsheet, write it down, however you like to organize your thoughts. Then figure out your income. So your salary is not actually your take-home income. And this is a conversation I have with people a lot. If your salary is $50,000 a year, that's not how much you're taking home.
No.
So you need to look at your paycheck. You need to see what deductions you have and figure out, okay, how much am I actually bringing home every month?
It's a net worth party.
Right. But that's not your net worth. That's just what you're bringing home. Then you need to know what you're spending. So track your spending. There are a couple spending apps that will do this for you. Personal Capital, Mint. You can also just do it yourself. You can write it down. You can export from your bank account or your credit card statement. Know what you're spending.
You need a budget every dollar.
And those are some options that you would pay for. But at this point, like let's say we're just helping you out at the very early nascent stages here. Just do what's free. Make it really easy on yourself. The next thing to think about is debt. So if you have debt, you need to list it and you need to list the interest rate along with that debt. Because the really bad thing about debt is interest rate. So you could have a mortgage with an interest rate of 3%. That's great. You could have $100 in credit card debt at 24%. That's bad. So it's not the total dollar amount of the debt, it's the interest rate. So make sure you know the interest rate. And then you want to look at whether or not you have an emergency fund. So an emergency fund is 3 to 6 months worth of your living expenses. So that's why you want to track your spending. So then you know what you spend every month and you can figure out what you spend in 3 months or 6 months. And the idea behind an emergency fund is that if you were to lose your job or if sort of every catastrophic thing were to happen to you all at the same time, you could manage financially for a couple months. You would be able to repair your roof, replace your car, things that all could happen at the same time, take your dog to the vet. That's why it's always good to have an emergency fund. So an emergency fund is cash, but not actual cash. I did have someone who had actual cash in a box. That's not what I mean. They were like, but you said cash. I mean in a bank account. So in a checking or a savings account, but it's something that's easily accessible.
Liquid capital.
Thank you. Yes. And then the next thing you want to look at is retirement savings. So if your employer offers a 401k or a 403b or a 527, look into saving into that vehicle. So especially if your employer is matching. And then there are all kinds of other options if you're self-employed, but the basic idea is that you want to be saving for retirement, ideally in a tax-advantaged way. All right, so that's kind of the really basic rundown that can get you started and can probably give most people some homework to do for, at least a couple weeks. And I think a lot of people don't actually know how they're doing, and there's a lot of fear when you don't know. And it's if you can put it all in one place, see it written down, it gives you a great deal of peace of mind. Because then you can just start to get your arms around it. And you can start to understand what you're working with.
Well, money can really be like the boogeyman in the closet or like the monster in the dark in the sense that it feels big and heavy and scary, but you can't quite see it clearly. And you can't really do anything about it if you can't see it clearly and touch it and see it and work with it. So if you can get it from that like nebulous, I don't really know what's happening, it comes in, it goes out, like space down onto actual paper with like real numbers that you can actually see and touch and move around and be intentional with and set up buckets for, that's a real game changer, both financially, but also like emotionally.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about success. On the mainstream path, people are endlessly chasing external indicators of success, often consumerism based. How have you consciously redefined success for yourself and your family?
Oh, Rachel, this is again, I feel like we need a panel here of people far smarter than me with far greater life experience. I think it's an ongoing process. I really think I see it in much the same way as I see my parenting, that you go through these phases with your child and it's unclear when it will end, but it is certain that they can't throw a tantrum at the farmer's market forever. There's going to be this is this afternoon, there's going to be an end to it at some point. Yes. I know. And I'm going to be able to leave or I don't know. I was sort of trying to hide behind a tree. So it's an ongoing process for me. It really is. And I think it does come back to identifying what's important to us. And so I think remaining very grounded in that and having a really strong sense of our family and our sort of place in the world is important to us, and really saying out loud to each other, my husband and I out loud to each other, okay, it doesn't matter to us that our clothes are not stylish. It's not a priority. And we will say that to each other. And I say, it's not a priority to me that our furniture does not look great right now, because there are unmentionable things that happen to our couch on a daily basis.
So many bodily fluids.
And not even that, also food. It's like, I'm not sure. I gave them an orange as a snack. Oh, and hard-boiled eggs. Just don't do them. Just don't. I'm just going to throw them out. So I think really being upfront and clear about what does matter to us and what doesn't matter to us has helped us a lot in aligning our spending. I don't care that our cars are old. It's not something that's a priority to me. What I do care is that we have really solid retirement savings, and that we have a strong investment portfolio, and that we have college savings accounts for both of our children. So I think it really does come back to having that alignment of your goals and values, and understanding how you're spending is helping that or hurting that. And that all ties in with your conception of success. So, my conception of success used to be how I looked. It really had a lot to do with my hair and my clothes. And if you saw me now, you'd be like, that has changed. So, it's just kind of recognizing that, being comfortable with that, and being comfortable with this evolution of what success is for our family, what a successful day is. I think sometimes I have to break it down and like, okay, this was a successful mealtime.
Yes.
Yes. We have made it through.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that we can very easily fall into that comparison trap where we see people walking around with flashy, expensive status symbols, and that can trigger feelings of lacking. But when you redefine what success means for you and your family, then that indicator meter of success is totally different. It's calibrated to something completely different. So, somebody driving a $100,000 car, you might be far more successful than them if you have retirement savings and an emergency savings account, and you're, spending your time in a way that aligns with your values, and you have really deep, nourishing relationships with the people in your life, and the person with the fancy car may not have any of that. So just really consciously defining your values and aligning your money with that. I think the thing that comes naturally from that is redefining what success means within that context.
And letting go of those comparisons, and really letting go of caring what other people may or may not think about you. Yeah. I think it's very easy to be caught up in that. And, one solution is to move to rural Vermont. We're a fashionable bunch here. But, I think there is something to be said for thinking carefully about where you live. Mm-hmm. Because, psychologists have shown that we compare ourselves up. We constantly compare up. So if you, for example, are flying coach and you see people in first class, you're likely to be less satisfied with your flight than if you didn't see people in first class. Same flight, same, you're in the same seat, but you've had that frame of reference where you've suddenly thought, oh, I am less than, and yes. So I think it's finding a way to be aware of that. It's not going to stop. It's human nature. And finding a way to pause yourself and say, okay, I am comparing. I'm wishing that I had this thing, but I can recognize what I'm doing without falling victim to it and without allowing myself to feel anxious about it. So a lot of times I think understanding behavioral economics is so helpful. Mm-hmm. When we understand sort of the fallacies that our minds fall into around money and around status, that can really help you let go, because for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love her dress. Like, why don't I have that dress? And I'm like, okay, mm-hmm. I see what I'm doing here, and if you can, I mean, and it's true, if you can sort of analyze yourself and understand, okay, is this actually something that I need, or do I just by comparison feel less than?
Yes, comparison. I feel like we need to do an entire podcast episode on that topic in and of itself. Okay, relationships. So you share some great stories in the book about how each step toward frugality was secondarily a step toward connection with your husband. And I think a lot of people really fear the opposite. Can you explain how intentional spending has affected your relationships?
Oh, yes. This is one of my favorites. So my husband and I, we've been married for, it'll be 11 years, I think, later this month.
Congratulations.
Why, thank you. And I think for us, again, the intentional spending, if you are in a partnership, you really need to have aligned goals. So this whole journey essentially forced us to sit down and say, what are our long-term goals, as a couple, as a family? Because where you want to be in life is going to dictate how you spend your money, and how you spend your money is very clearly going to dictate where you're going to end up in life. And so if you don't have that shared vision with your partner, with your family, things are not going to go as well, because the way that you choose to allocate your resources of time and money are the way that you are going to create your life.
Yeah.
And so sitting down and having those conversations, and that again, that is not a one-time process. We do that all the time. We sit down and sort of have these conversations about long-term visions, short-term ideas. A lot of what we talk about is that planning together. And so it's not as though you do it once and then, okay, we're on this path. We are determined. We are going to save money. It's an ongoing element of your life. And so the way that frugality has brought us closer is by encouraging us to rely on each other. So it's for the most part, instead of hiring someone, for example, to install the dishwasher, my husband does it himself. And so by doing that, we are working together, we're collaborating, we're problem solving, we're enjoying the process. Maybe not like enjoying the process, we're bonded over the process. And it's also true, this is another great behavioral economics bit of research, people are more satisfied with projects they do themselves, even if the project does not look as good. And if you saw our dishwasher, you would know what I'm talking about. It has, I like to say that it's liberated on top. It's very liberated because it doesn't have any countertop over it. So it's like,
cool.
It's open, it's breezy, but we're delighted with it. It's something that we were able to do ourselves. It didn't cost very much. So looking for opportunities like that are great. The other thing that's wonderful about it is that it encourages us to just spend time together.
Yeah.
Because the cheapest thing to do is go for a walk together, or sit and talk on the porch together after the kids are in bed, or play Scrabble, or play drinking Scrabble, which we have done on occasion. And, it's sort of rediscovering these kind of like hokey, fun things that we do together, often at home. It's often free, and it's really enjoyable. We recently have started listening to podcasts together and then discussing them. And so this is like it's just like a free, great thing that we can do that brings us closer. And so the goal isn't, okay, let's, save as much money as we can on entertainment, but it's a byproduct of choosing to do things that ultimately allow us to spend more time as a family, spend more time with our kids. And I think, we haven't even talked about the parenting aspect yet, but the relationship with our children is very focused on spending time together. It's very focused on exploration outside and being creative and innovative. And, it's not focused on stuff, and it's not focused on screens. And I am sure when they're teenagers, they're going to say, I cannot believe, Mom and Dad, that you are both home all the time in our business. But you know what? We're going to be around. We're going to be those parents. And so it's having that opportunity is wonderful. The kids love it when they're young, and we love it. And we just have that time and that space to really sink into sort of mindful, slow parenting.
Yes. I think too that there's this false dichotomy that I have seen between a yes style of parenting. Like, I'm not sure how familiar you are with this podcast, but we do like natural homeschooling and gentle parenting, which is there's a whole lot of a component of finding the yes in that. And a lot of people believe there's a false dichotomy between, like, you have to pick between this way of living with children and being intentional with your money. But I completely disagree. From the way we approach it, we sort of have family ownership of the resources, and we collaborate all together as a family about what experiences are important to us and what goals we want to work toward. And like, my middle son wanted to learn how to play the guitar, and music lessons are not cheap. So first he tried YouTube, like trying to do it through YouTube, and he really needed more. So then we found like an online class, and he tried that, and he had a lot of reasons why he felt like he really needed to connect with someone in person, where he could like, in a tactile sense, like feel and see exactly what they're doing. And so like, he and I have been collaborating on finding something that will work for that. And we just found like this great homeschool band program that has a guitar class. But the point being, like, music lessons are expensive. I could have just said like, no, like, no, we're not going to spend that much money on this passion that you have, on this thing you're interested in, because it's not important to me. Like, no. But since we really try to view our finances like as a family issue, and we really give our kids a literal and figurative seat at the table in a lot of that goal setting and a lot of those conversations, they can bring up things that are really important to them, and they get to be a part of that negotiation process of, like, if we want to say yes to this thing, what other thing are you willing to say no to, so that we can reallocate those funds?
Yes. That's so wonderful and refreshing to hear, because that is so the approach that we hope to take. We have babies right now, but that is very much, I think, the level of discretion that we want to give our kids. Like, okay, there's a finite amount of resources.
Exactly.
I don't know, what do you want to do? And that's always going to be the case in your life. You're always going to have a finite amount of resources in some way, and so it's, you, child, be enfranchised, figure it out. And we already do that, with our 3-year-old, that she understands that we don't have a lot of toys out at one time. And so if she would like to have the baby doll stroller out, then the baby doll high chair is going to go away, and you need to, and she can make that choice, and that's fine.
And we do it with our time and our energy in other ways too. So it's a concept that kids, in theory, if you're having this sort of dialogue with them, can easily extend to money. Like, if one of your kids wants to go to the park and one of the kids wants to go to the beach, you come together and you say, okay, we have 4 hours until we have to be in this place. Like, what should we do? How should we do it? Like, if you really give them a seat at the table, then it's with other things like time and your hands, and then they can really easily then just extend that out to money.
I love that. I'm so happy to hear that is working well in your family. And that's very much what I do with the girls when they're fighting over a toy, as I say, okay, you need to figure this out. How are you going to play with this together? And this is like very not successful right now, because the 3-year-old is very verbal. And so she has she's like talking up a storm, and the 15-month-old is just sitting there going, "Rah, rah, rah," and she can't talk. And so this is the real issue, is the 3-year-old's like, but I'm asking her to share. And I'm just trying not to laugh, but my hope is that eventually it's like, instead of me swooping in and making the decision for them, I'm hoping that what I'm doing is like giving them the guideposts of, okay, we share, we don't hit in our family, blah, 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 figure it out, and I'm hoping that then that will extend to them feeling enfranchised to make other choices later on.
Well, and sharing is not developmentally, like, they can't quite developmentally grasp that until like around the age of 4. So before then, Let me just throw this random bit out there for the people listening. Turns work much better before they can fully grasp the concept of sharing. It requires a level of empathy and ability to put yourself behind the other person's eyes that they don't quite have yet before the age of 4. So turns work really well before then.
And do you like facilitate the turn? Because we've tried this too, and it's a tough concept. Like, do you sit there and say, okay, it's your turn, now it's your turn, or how do you?
To start with, yeah. So like when you're first kind of teaching them the concept of that, you have to make it a short enough period of time that the youngest kid can still follow what's happening. And you can even like set a timer, like be real annoying and structured about it in the very beginning. But then after you've been doing it for a while, they no longer need you to provide that structure. Like the little one will just sort of reach their hands out and say turn, and then the big one will say 2 more minutes, and then it will be your turn. Then they'll kind of go back and forth. But to start with, you have to provide the structure just so they can learn. Really, it's about learning to trust that if they give up this thing that they have, it will come back to them.
What a good life lesson in general. You give this up, it will come back to you.
Yes.
I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do, the timer is very popular in our house.
Oh.
They like that. So, because it's sort of like a third party arbitrator. We're like, well, I don't know. It's the timer. I don't, I have no control over the timer. So,
exactly.
So that's great. Yeah, we're working on the turn.
Well, we have to be cognizant of the fact that in sort of the mainstream parenting paradigm, an adult will say share and then take the toy away from the child. So really, we're not teaching them to share. We're teaching them to take things away, which is not a lesson that we want to impart. So it's good to try whenever possible to, like, if a child is engaging in a healthy and appropriate way with a material or an activity and another kid comes up and wants it, as much as possible, it's best to honor that that kid is working with that material right now. And I always try to put myself in that situation and say I was working with a hammer on this project I was constructing with wood, and my husband came over and said, hey, I want that hammer. Can I use that? How might I respond? And what would I hope that he would, what sort of latitude would he give me, and what would feel respectful from me, my perspective and his perspective. And then I try and apply that down on a younger scale.
We'll work on that. We work on swapping things, but that's a little bit challenging right now. So thank you.
Yeah. You are most welcome. I would also say at that stage, we were heavy on the prevention. So, and kind of the space boundaries, especially because the older one is developmentally capable of playing at a level that the younger one is not yet capable of playing at. So the older one may set up a very intricate, dollhouse situation. And then the younger one wants to join in, but can't hang with that level of play. Sometimes I would use a space boundary, so-and-so's setting up this really complicated tower of blocks on this rug, and over here I'm going to set aside some blocks for you to build your tower on. And so there's sort of a space division.
Yes.
And I would redirect if I saw the younger one toddling over to the older one's structure and invite them to engage in another activity.
Well, and that is very much was my vision. And so we have a kitchen table where my older daughter is welcome to take her projects and do them up there. And what does she do? She comes and sits right next to the baby. And it is sweet, but then she says, she's taking my toy. And I said, well, you sat right kind of on top of her lap. So she probably, and that's what I say, because she can be up on the table, or she can even go up to her room on her own and play. She's very responsible in that context. And so I think where the tension comes in is she chooses to be, really on top of her sister, and, is then shocked that. So we're kind of working through navigating, when you make a choice like that, what the consequences are going to be.
It sounds like you have set things up so perfectly and so beautifully.
I don't know about that.
and then it's just a matter of letting them feel their feelings about it.
I know. I'm I've got a table here for you. Like I even wiped the oatmeal off of it so it's not sticky.
Yeah, that's when I say things like, I can see you really want to sit next to your sister and you don't want her to touch your toy. And that can be really frustrating. You can tell me about it. I'll listen. But like,
That's so what I say. That makes me feel so much better.
oh
That's
yeah, you have
exactly-
to switch out of problem solving mode and just into like empathizing mode.
That is what I do. I've read a lot of parenting books, and they, that seems to sort of be a thread that goes through it. Okay, so for the people who are listening to this and they really want to know about money and simplicity, so this really does come to bear though, because I don't buy new toys for my kids. I don't buy toys that make noise or flash or take batteries. We have hand-me-downs. We have kind of a random panoply of stuff, including like empty cardboard boxes and, nature. And what I find is that the fewer toys we have out, the more creative they are and the more deeply they engage with those toys. And so I don't feel a pressure to sort of buy new, quote unquote, learning toys for them, because they will take the scarf and the cup and create a world. And I think it's feeling like you really can accept and embrace like simplicity and minimalism to an extent. I'm not really a minimalist, but I think it's, I kind of border on that. It really is compatible, I think, with kids. And my kids have pretty simple bedrooms, and it's just, I think, identifying again what the priorities are, what you want to own, and not feeling that you need to give your kids everything.
No. In giving them everything, you're really not setting them up for success. And I'm not even speaking necessarily in terms of like a spoiling context, but just in terms of kids are so sensory and they absorb their environment and they reflect it back as behavior. And one of the first things in all of the coaching that I do is because I do coaching online, and I have families send me, no matter what they're coming to me for, I have them send me pictures of their home environments. And the first step is to simplify.
And I even find beyond this stuff, it's also the noise.
Yeah, all the senses.
It's everything. So that's why we don't have toys that make noise. We only have music on if we're doing dancing. I usually don't have background noise, because when I don't, I hear both of them lurbling and durbling and sort of, they're creating these worlds and they're talking and they're just in this free space. And so I've thought a lot about that, and a lot about having like, okay, what does that mean to me to be simplified? And it means in a lot of ways that it's baby proofed. I don't have knickknacks. I don't have a lot of furniture, just don't have a lot of stuff out, because then they really can experience that space in the way that they want to, which usually involves licking it, which I still, the licking thing, both of them, the 3-year-old still, I'm like, why are you, I can't, the worms, licking the worms outside. I'm like, is there a need to do that? Do we need to learn about them? I don't even say anything. I mean, because if I say anything, it'll be an issue. But
Exactly. Natural consequences.
Oh, yes, 100%. And like, she's like, that tasted awful. I'm like,
yeah, interesting.
Okay.
Good observation.
That's exactly what I say. That's like my parenting response. And so it's just, well, yep. I mean, what are you going to say? But it's, it really does. It comes back to this idea of, I think there is pressure that people feel that they need to enroll their kids in classes and in extracurriculars, and they need to buy a lot of books and toys and, things that are going to facilitate growth and development. And, sure, you need some things. But I think sort of giving myself as a parent the permission to accept that my kids are fine with used hand-me-down stuff and they're fine with not having that much of it.
I think a lot of times parents, and it's really fueled by anxiety, I find, will lean so far forward as to fill in all of the space.
Yes.
And then complain that their children can't do anything for themselves and don't play independently.
Yes.
Yes. And it's a conversation of, you are taking up all of the space, like figuratively and literally. You have to lean back, and what blossoms in that open space that you create is all of those traits and qualities that you're hoping to foster: creativity and peace and independence.
And the problem solving, I think what amazes me, so one of the reasons that we wanted to live rurally, and you might feel this way as well, is that we wanted to be able to let our kids play outside unsupervised.
Yep.
And, living in New York City, Boston, DC, forget it. It's not a reasonable expectation unless you have like a very specific fenced in yard situation, which we could not afford that in the city. And so having the ability to, I open the door, my 3-year-old can go out and she can play out there by herself. And she knows the rules of staying where she can see the house, and she comes and checks in with me. But what's incredible to me, I watch her through the windows a lot. She does not know I'm watching her. But I will watch her experience like travails for a 3-year-old. I mean, she will fall over, her shoe will fall off, like mud falls out of her bucket. This would be a tantrum if I was there. But since I'm not there, she gets up, she figures it out. She either takes the other shoe off or she puts them on. She gets the mud back in the pail, and she will come in with like cuts and scrapes. And I'm thinking like, that probably hurt, but she manages it. And it's because she's alone and she has that freedom and that independence. And it's amazing to me as I'm peering through the window, to make sure she's okay.
Yes.
But the way in which she problem solves. And then the minute I'm out there, she falls apart. Mom, like, I'm just trying to hang up the laundry. Don't let me.
Freedom definitely leads to independence.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, there's one other relationship that I wanted to ask you about, and that is extended family. So how have your relationships with extended family been as you guys have really shifted into this alternative lifestyle of intentional spending? That's not a question I had written down, by the way. I'm just...
No, I like it because, it's the way that we parent is so influenced by the way that we were parented and, by the role models that we have. And so it's actually has been wonderful with both my family and my in-laws. We had a really good relationship before. We've always had a good relationship. So I think we're really fortunate. And I won the in-law lottery. I have the best in-laws. So I think that there's a lot of luck that goes into that. You don't know. You don't know who you're going to marry. And I just happen to really enjoy spending time with my parents, with my in-laws, with my siblings in-law. And I think one of the reasons that it works so well is that my husband and I are not evangelists. So we do this, I write about it. I have a book. I come on podcasts like this. I don't talk about this in my real life.
Right.
I mean, not that this is my real life right now, but I am a real person, but this is not a topic that I bring up with friends. I don't bring it up with family, simple living, frugality. I don't need to insert it into every conversation. I don't ask people about their money. I'm not an evangelist, and I think that is what has made it so smooth. I do have family members and friends who come to me for, confidentially for financial advice. And I am so happy to help them.
Yes.
I'm like, I thought you'd never ask. I am so fulfilled and gratified helping people with their money, but they've got to come to me. I'm not, and they've got to come to me like a number of times, and like really want my help because it's just, I don't feel the need to tell other people that what I do is right because I don't know if what I do is right. What I do seems to work for me and my husband in our specific unique circumstance, and I'm not comfortable telling other people that that's what they need to do. And so I think a lot of our relationships have not really been impacted just because it's like, yeah, this is what I do. It's my work. Full stop. That can be the end of the conversation. And I have a lot of people who I work with through the context of Frugalwoods who are embracing a frugal lifestyle or who are on a journey to financial independence. And one of the biggest questions is, how do I convey this to my family, right? And how do I get my family on board? And I'm like, whoa. You don't get your family on board.
No.
That's not your job. You can live that life and they can see that you are happy and successful. And if they want to ask you for help, great. But otherwise, it's not your business. So I think that's the answer of why it has just been sort of a non-issue. with our families.
I think that a lot of people struggle with having healthy relationships with extended family when they make choices that are different than the ways that they were raised or the way that their extended family did things. And I think you hit on something that I often talk about, which is that if you have peace, like in contentment with the lifestyle choices that you are making, then that's what the people who care about you will respond to. So if you are, kind of panicked all the time and worried all the time and complaining all the time, then you're going to get well-intentioned advice and well-intentioned, like hands-on support to try and move you in a different direction.
Like hands-on support. That's good. Yeah.
But if you are content, like with the lifestyle that you are living, then people feed off of that. Also, I find that a lot of people will fall into a trap with their extended family of pursuing validation and approval. And so to really consciously recalibrate your sense of fulfillment and okayness and validity, it has to come from yourself and, from your family unit. If you spend your adult life chasing that approval and validation from extended family, it's really, you may never get it.
Yeah.
And that's not your fault.
And even if you do get it, it may not manifest in the way that you had always hoped.
No.
And I think, you're talking about external validation, and that's external validation,
Yep.
And I think what it comes down to for my family and I is just mutual respect. They respect
That's
what
nice.
we do. We respect what they do. They do different things than us, and that's fine. And I think being confident enough in what you do to extend that respect, and being confident enough that, if you think this is a wild idea, that's okay, because I'm really comfortable with what I do.
Yes. Yes.
All
All
of
of that.
Yeah. And really having grounding, having a real framework for yourself of a support network that is in a similar vein as you, and having people who you can bounce ideas off of if you find that your extended family is not very receptive, for example. I think it
Yes.
is important to have that community. And the great thing is with the internet, you can find people, who you're going to identify with and who will offer you useful advice, and I think another element of this is the parenting element. So my parents and in-laws, they don't live close to us, but they come and visit for extended periods of time, which is wonderful. And they watch our kids for us. And you know what? When they're watching the kids, it's their rules. Because I just feel that if they're giving me that gift of their loving care and attention for the kids, if they want to do things a little bit differently than we do, that's fine. And I think that's kind of goes to the mutual respect, because I'm like, okay, you raised 3 kids, you're going to be fine,
It's very freeing to accept that you get to create the relationship that you want with your children, and you are going to be that primary relationship that builds the neural template upon which they do everything else in their lives. And because of that, you can let them have relationships with other people too that are completely outside of you and are not the way that you want your relationship with your children to be.
Oh, so well said. That's that's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
Okay, community. So your move from urbanite to rural homesteader illuminated the value of community for you. And once again, being frugal seemed to be the tool or value that reoriented you toward community. It seems intentional spending helps build community, and a good community helps you to be more intentional with your spending. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a perfect assessment. Frugality is so compatible with friendship and with community and with deep connection, because when you're not focused on spending money, you all of a sudden sort of have more time. And this sounds strange, but think about it. If you're not shopping, be that online or in stores, you're not chasing fads or trends, you're not going out to eat all the time, what are you doing? And what we have found and what we've filled a lot of that time with are community organizations. So We belong to a church. It's a very progressive, liberal church that we just have a lot of deep connection to spiritually, but also from a community perspective. We're involved with nonprofit organizations. We're involved with community organizations within our town. We are very integrated with our neighbors and our friends. I was actually late tonight because my husband was driving a friend home because she was sick and had her kids, and I had my kids, and then I was going to take somebody else's kids home. And it's this wonderful web of people who rely on each other.
Yeah.
And a piece of that for us, I think, is living rurally, that, we and our neighbors, we kind of have to depend on each other because there are no stores, there are no restaurants, there are no, we don't have those things here. And so we do rely on each other for our entertainment and our community. And we have community dinners and potlucks and gatherings and parties. And I was at the community farmers market today and nobody was looking at their phone. That would partially be because we don't have cell reception. So that's like a good way to get people off. I'm telling you, live rurally, you don't have cell reception, so you don't have to worry about it. Yes. But I think you can find that anywhere. You can find that in a city. You can find that in a suburb. And it's really finding people who want to connect with you deeply and who want to spend time together. And it's so important when you have kids because I always need help. Like I always need somebody to do something. And having people who are like family is such a gift. And there is so much barter and trade and sharing that goes on where there's no money that exchanges hands, but our neighbor came and watched our girls last night so that my husband and I could go out on a date, and she won't let us pay her, but we'll find a way to, do something for her. My husband set up her computer for her. So it's like you find these ways to really create this sharing economy, because what I find is most people are really excited to do that.
Yes.
Most people are not like, how can I spend more money? It's true because people are, they're embarrassed. They're unsure about things like bartering and trading, and most people are just, oh, thank goodness. We didn't really want to go out to dinner either, or something along those lines. So you can find these things if you just scratch the surface.
I'm obsessed with the whole concept of the sharing economy. Like we have a local buy nothing group. They're everywhere up here. And talking about toys, all the toys just get shared around. Like my kid will have a toy they're done with and I'll post it up on buy nothing. And then if there's a specific toy or tool or material that my kid's looking for, like I can just ask on there and someone will be like, oh yeah, that's sitting in my garage. You can come and pick it up. And then tools for kids, also tools for adults.
Yes.
How many mainstream American households have 3-car garages filled with thousands of dollars of tools that they'll use once a year? So just sharing all of that kind of stuff and expertise even.
Oh yeah.
Coming, like you said, your husband went over and helped her with the computer. Maybe your plumber friend comes over and helps you with the plumbing. And then when their tractor dies, maybe you know how to fix them with that. Help them fix that. The expertise piece, money. Someone might come to you with a money question, and then you might go to them for a baking question, whatever it is. Just
that actually happened to me this week. So yes, that does.
Perfect example.
I had a bread machine situation. My bread machine vibrated off the counter and broke. So this is just a PSA that can happen. And I was really mad because I found this bread machine on the side of the road for free. So it's like, are you kidding me?
It needed a seatbelt.
It did. I don't know. It was really tragic. But no, finding, and I think too, this kind of comes back to this, karmic idea of the universe, if I can say that, where it's you sharing and giving things away, doing that freely really does open you up to
100%.
These wonderful opportunities. When we let go of a scarcity mindset and we let go of the sense that, resources are limited and that we have to cling to every possession we have, it feels better. It feels better to give things away. It feels better to share, even thinking, if that doesn't come back around to me, that's okay.
When we first moved up here to the Pacific Northwest from San Diego, I came up here with flip-flops and sundresses, and that was basically my wardrobe. And I have 3 kids, and I had a friend who lived up here who I hadn't spent a lot of time with before moving here. And she showed up at our house with like full sets of like winter wardrobe for a bunch of kids. And I remember asking, because I specifically said, well, don't you want to hang on to the bigger stuff to like pass it down, through your kids? And she said, it'll come back around. Like, and of course it totally has. Like, my kids are old, my top two are older than hers, so she has gotten so much more, than that initial like thing that she lent us. But it's so true, and I'd never heard anyone say that before. She just showed up at my door with all this stuff that we actually needed and told me that, and then ever since then I've really been trying to live that way, and it is 1,000% true.
And it's very gratifying too, because it lets you, it just lets you see, oh, you know what, you have a need for that. Let me help you fill that need. Without you needing to buy anything. So see, this is financial, but it's also an emotional and a community building exercise. And I think buy nothing groups are such an excellent illustration of that. But you don't even have to have a formal buy nothing group. We don't have a very active buy nothing group up here, but my friends and I, especially around the kid and baby stuff, and we joke, it's like right now it's like the traveling pair of rain boots that like every kid seems to have, and we're like, okay, wait, does yours need this yet? Does yours? No. Okay, we're good with, all right, so we're still wearing these and you can have these next. And
yes.
And then there was a case where I gave away some baby stuff and I was like, oh, I think I actually need that back. And they're like, okay, well, I gave it to somebody else and we figured it out. And I gave away a lot of maternity clothes in between my pregnancies. And then I got pregnant with my second faster than I thought. So I was telling my friends, I was like, I am going to need those clothes back quite a bit sooner than, but it works out. And it's just, I don't know. It's just a wonderful way to live. And then you have less stuff that you own overall.
It makes it really easy to let go of belongings when you are passing them on to somebody else that you know and care about. It makes it really easy to keep that stuff flowing out of your house as opposed to it all getting stuck and stagnant.
And you know what else it does? It eliminates paralysis by analysis. So when we have to buy something new, I don't know about you, but I'm looking at like every user review. I'm spending hours down a rabbit hole. Like, I wouldn't know which bread machine to get. I would probably spend the next 6 months deliberating over bread machine. I would just like not eat bread for maybe that would be a good diet. But the point, when you are buying new, it's often such a huge outlay of resources. And for me, it's like all this stress comes up around the purchase. Like, I don't know, is this going to be the right bread machine?
So much yes for me.
Is there a better bread machine? I don't know. Why does it not come in red? Like, I don't understand why I can't, so you can get anxious, you can get angry, and then it doesn't arrive on time, and then it doesn't work as perfectly as you thought it would. And that's a lot of tension and anger and frustration that can be pent up in a purchase. And so are you actually bringing yourself fulfillment, or are you causing more pain? Because, okay, behavioral economics again, more choices do not make us happier. More choices decrease our happiness.
Yep.
So I'm going to tell you how I replaced this bread machine that vibrated off the counter. I went to a yard sale with my girlfriend, and I see her like running towards me, and she's got a bread machine like a football under her arm, and she's like, I found your bread machine. It's like, okay. So, and the woman was like, excuse me, you need to pay for that. And she's like, it's for my friend. She's like, I know, but like you need, and I was like, don't worry, I'm coming.
Thankfully, she wasn't tackled.
No, she was like running off the like yard sale. I was like, okay, I'm coming. So I got a $5 bread machine at the yard sale.
Perfect.
And it works. It made a loaf of bread, whatever. So it's just, wow, how much time and stress I allowed myself not to experience, let alone that it's like a $400 bread machine that I got for $5. So.
Oh, and the sunk cost fallacy. Tell us about that too.
Yes. Oh. In what? Sorry, now I'm losing my train of thought.
So just tell people what it means, and then we can go from there.
I'm gonna have to Google it, Rachel. I can't remember now. I just wrote about it. Now I gotta.
You literally just wrote about it, because I believe that I wrote it down just randomly on this piece of paper because you had written about it, and I was like, oh, I want to make sure I give her the chance to say that. So
I did. So let me tell you what happens is that I have two kids and a lot happened today. So the sunk cost fallacy. All right. So what happens is that a lot of times we make decisions that are based on like our emotional attachment to something. And so the more we put into something, the more inclined we are to keep doing it, even if it's not working out. So I think you could think of a lot of different examples. The example I used most recently was my hair. I had really long hair and I just put like so many years into growing it, but it wasn't serving me. It was stressing me out because the baby would just get in the backpack and just pull it, just like pull mom's hair. And it didn't fit under the hat that I wear in the wintertime for hiking. It was like always in my face. It was blowing around. It took forever to wash, took forever to dry. It was a frustration. My idea was, okay, well, I've had this hair for so long and it's so beautiful when I blow dry it and curl it once a year. Once a year. Okay, come on. Possibly twice a year. And so I wasn't looking at like the actual benefit that I was deriving, which the benefit was zero. All right. So that's the sunk cost fallacy. So once I kind of realized that, I was like, oh, I can just cut off my hair and be happier about it and have less stress and less torment around this thing that I've been like plowing resources into, even though it's not working.
Sunk cost fallacy, like I kind of think of it like it's when you are reluctant to let go of something because of the resources of like time, money, or effort that you have already invested into that thing, even if it is no longer serving you.
That was said much better than me. Yeah. That's what she said. That's perfect. And I think, this can apply in like modes of parenting where, my husband and I have like had to do 180s at times where we look at each other and we're like, okay, this idea is no longer bearing fruit. And so being comfortable with saying, we have to change this, this like toothbrushing methodology or whatever, it's like, it's not happening. And having that agility and having kind of that confidence to change is very freeing.
Ooh, having the agility and confidence to change is very freeing. I love that. You just made up for the the last bit with that one.
Hey, listen, I am agile and confident in how often I forget things. So there's a reason why I write and not speak.
I can so relate to that. I mean, I guess I have a podcast, so I do speak, but writing...
Yeah, you're doing great.
Writing is really my primary modality of communication. Okay, let's talk about environmentalism. It's funny how all these seemingly separate spheres overlap once you begin wading through them. I went all in with gentle parenting, which led to natural homeschooling, which led to simple living, which led to financial freedom, which led to zero waste or environmentalism. I know that being an intentional spender leads to a more impactful environmentalism for you, right?
Absolutely. So going back to, I agree. You said it so well.
Yes.
So how can I add on this?
The correct answer, Rachel, is yes.
That was right. I agree. But this is a great connection to what we were talking about with getting used hand-me-downs and then passing things along. You are saving things from a landfill. And you're also saving the embodied costs of new. So the packaging, the transportation, the manufacturing, if you think about it, let's go back to the bread machine example. That's quite a bit that was saved there. Plus, this bread machine I bought was saved from being thrown into the trash. It's a perfectly functional bread machine. So that's one aspect of, why I like used things. And I think then another piece is just consuming less in general. So just buying less overall, like even less used things. It's like buying used is not a license to go buy a ton of stuff. It's a way of getting the things you need for less. So owning less overall. And then this translates over into food a lot. I see that, really trying not to throw out food. So we compost because we have the land to compost. And, beyond the food that goes into the compost, our goal is not to throw out any food. And that was like 100%. And then we had kids. And so it's still something that we really work for. And it's harder with them. And I've tried a lot of different approaches, and I would love to hear ideas on that. But the idea that we don't buy more than we need in a week at the grocery store, that's kind of the root of it, that I'm not taking rotten stuff out of the fridge and throwing it away. And I think when you can identify a pattern like that that's happening every week, that's an easy thing for you to fix, and you can start then saving more money and being more environmentally friendly every week, because most of us at some point are overbuying at the grocery store. That is why I don't do the grocery shopping. So I am not allowed. My husband does it because I just get in there. I'm like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure we need Cheetos. Pretty sure we need them. And he's like, what is this? So, again, knowing yourself, all right? Knowing like who in the partnership is going to be better at the grocery shopping.
Yeah, people are like, don't go to the grocery store hungry. But anytime I go into the grocery store, every time I'm in there surrounded by food, I'm suddenly hungry.
I know. I have to buy they have like takeout sandwiches at the grocery store, and I always end up needing to buy them. Well, and then like a kid eats it with me, but still, I just I don't know. It's not a good scene for me, really.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so one recent example that I had of this is with our, we have like a cleaning drawer, and I swear to God, like 10 different cleaners in there. And so instead, I just bought a glass spray bottle and put like white vinegar, distilled water, and essential oil in it, and it cleans everything so much better than the other like 10 bottles of chemical garbage that I'm always replacing.
100%. So yeah, I do. I'm even simpler than you because I'm like the laziest homesteader ever. So I just do water and white vinegar. I don't even do distilled. I don't do essential. I don't even have oils. So it's just water and white vinegar, and it's fine. And what's great about it is that my kids like to help me clean. And my 3-year-old, she's actually like pretty good. She'll spray it and she'll rub the rag. Like she really gets it. And I feel totally confident because it's vinegar and water.
And they lick everything.
Oh my gosh. So that was the next part of the story was like, she was cleaning in the bathroom. Like she was doing a great job, like cleaning the toilet. I was cleaning the sink. And then I turn around, and I'm not kidding you, the 15-month-old and the 3-year-old are licking the toilet lid, like the closest, because she had sprayed vinegar, and they're both like, yummy vinegar. I was like, where have I gone wrong in my life? What? I was just like, why are you? It's not like I don't feed you,
Clearly, you're not starving.
So mixed results on whether or not you should let your 3-year-old clean, but it's kind of, I think it's a great example of this like holistic circle, okay, of I clean my own house, right? Okay, so that saves money. I use a product that is pennies. I mean, the vinegar is like $3 for like 10 gallons. Or
yeah,
something.
We get it in bulk from Costco.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's also something that is so safe and so environmentally friendly that it's not putting chemicals into the environment or the air, and it allows my children to learn and be with me and to grow and develop those skills. So,
Absolutely.
Does it get any better than that? I don't
know. It's like win, 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 win. I lost count of all the wins on that.
All the wins. And you discover that they'll lick a toilet seat lid. I mean, at least it was like in our house, So.
And they'll survive it.
And that's another good lesson, that, yeah, they do. And the sort of the resiliency, and I think that's something that I need to remember more, that they will survive it.
They will survive it. Yep. Let that be your mantra for the week and just feel it out.
They survive a lot.
So if we want to embrace more frugality in our lives, but we're not sure how, where are some good places to start?
So through my blog, which is frugalwoods.com, I offer a free 31-day challenge. It's called the Uber Frugal Month Challenge, but don't be afraid about the frugal word, all right? It's the Uber Fun Month, all right?
Remember, we're taking frugal back.
Bringing frugal back, that's right. So this is something that will really help you identify where your money is, where you're spending, what you're earning, kind of those basic steps I talked through earlier. That is a way of doing it with me. So I'll be in your inbox every day, and there are exercises for you to conduct and questions to answer for yourself and things to fill out that really just helps guide you through this process of starting to think about your money more holistically. So that's free. And like I said, I am a big fan of, kind of start with the free stuff and figure out what you feel like is going to work for you. There are a number of books that I recommend and really enjoy. So J.L. Collins wrote a book called The Simple Path to Wealth, and that is
incredible.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
He actually wrote it initially as kind of a letter to his daughter, she's in her 20s, and he wanted to explain financial management, money management in just a very straightforward, not a dumbed down way, but just so straightforward. It's like, oh, I totally get this, and so that's a great one. I like to actually reread that because it's just such a helpful tutorial and it's written beautifully.
It is. I loved that one.
Good one. Another couple books that I recommend are by Erin Lowry, and they are also excellent kind of 101 books. So her first book is Get Your Financial Life Together, and it is the true 101. So I would say if you're thinking I'm not ready for The Simple Path to Wealth, which is more about investing, start with Erin's book. And then she also has an investing book, but that will give you a really nice kind of gentle introduction. And you can do my Uber Frugal month.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I didn't even know you had that.
Hey, I think it's pretty amazing. And then I also, more on a parenting bend, I really like Simplicity Parenting. There's both Simplicity Parenting and then there's also a Simplicity Parenting discipline book. And I find that I really think it's like frugal parenting because it's simplicity in the context of everything that we've just been talking about. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my ideas about not having out too many toys, minimizing distractions, minimizing noise, reducing the amount of money you spend stems from ideas I got from that book.
I loved the first half of that book and then loved less the second half of that book.
Of the discipline or of the main?
The main one of Simplicity Parenting. I love the first half of, and we can totally cut this out, by the way. Just the first.
Oh, I don't care. I'm not a parenting expert. Obviously, I'm trying to figure out what to do with my children licking a toy.
Well, no, I'm totally going to include. I'm going to include links to all of these resources. But since I'm going to be linking to this book per your recommendation, I'm just going to speak to it real quick. The first half of it, I loved. I was like highlighting all the things because it was all about like simplifying as like kind of like a form of treatment. He has like a therapy background like I do. So I loved that. And I totally do something similar in my coaching. But then like as the book went on, I really felt how much it was rooted in kind of the mainstream power structure where like the parents are up really, really high and the kids are down really low and the families are supposed to kind of look a certain kind of structural family therapy, which I know people who have that background would get it. Whereas I lean a lot more toward like collaboration and giving kids access and it's just a little mainstream on the parenting side, but the simplicity piece and how he brings simplicity into that parenting realm, I thought was definitely a value add.
I think that for me, and it's been a while since I've read that book, so I should reread it. But I think for me, what really resonated was the simplicity idea and just this concept of having fewer toys out, having like way fewer toys out and decluttering your child's life in every sense. Like they don't need 10 activities a day. They don't, it's, and just finding ways to really be okay with them being bored and figuring it out.
Yep. That space. Give them the space, that open space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want to say one thing in your book that you talked about that you did when you were kind of in this transition is that you quit wearing makeup. And I loved that part of your book because I don't wear makeup either. And I used to. My mom gave me makeup in 6th grade and was like, no, you wear this all the time. Because she never even left her bedroom without like full makeup. Oh. So, and then like when I was, when I first graduated from college and started like wearing my therapist hat, I was like, oh, now I have to wear like makeup again. I have to be like legit. And then I realized like, no, even now that I'm like a legit professional, nope. So I'm like pretty hardcore, no makeup. I have a small set of like very simple basic makeup that I only wear when I have to do media work. Cause like when you go on TV, they insist that you look like a clown.
They do. They would like email me in advance. They're like, you're going to have to wear makeup for that.
Yes, me too. Yep. Me too. Totally same here. And we have a beauty episode of this podcast where we talked about the whole makeup issue, but I loved how you walked in your book kind of through your feelings around that and how you worked through that process. So I just want to give you some props on that and suggest that, hey, makeup's expensive. That's a good way where somebody can start.
Oh, it totally is. And it's another one of those many pronged things. So it's not just about saving the money. It's time.
Yeah.
And it has a lot to do with your self-worth and your confidence. And again, being grounded and confident in who you are. And I'm not saying that wearing makeup means you're not confident. That's not what I'm saying. It's, I had to come around to a place of actually being like, okay with my face without makeup.
Yes.
And the idea now that I leave the house all the time without makeup. I very rarely wear it. Sometimes I wear it, a little bit, but it's not very common. I don't do it very often. And being okay with that was a big step for me in growing and learning. And then what really kind of pushed me over the edge was having daughters. I have 2 daughters, and I don't want them watching me change my face every day.
Yes.
And, it's funny because I did wear makeup. I think I put makeup on for church. Oh, I was singing a solo at church. So I put some makeup on, and my older daughter was like, "What are you doing? What is that?" And I was so excited because I was like, "Oh my gosh, she does not know what makeup is."
Yes.
And so, and then I think what really helps me is like when you have to distill the reason for why you're doing something down to a toddler's level, you will really start to question life choices.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Because she'll say, but why are you putting it on? I say, well, it's makeup. I'm getting fancy for church. But why? Yes. Why do you wear that? And when you need to answer that question, I was like, oh, this is deep. And I think I was just like, I don't know. I came up with some, substandard response in the moment. But I think sometimes, if you think, okay, if I had to explain to a child why I'm doing this, would I be proud of that? End
yes. Kids help you question everything, and you really have to be in touch with your why and be able to articulate it in order for those choices that you're making to stand up to their level of scrutiny.
Absolutely. Because if you say I'm doing it so that I look pretty, they say, but
so I don't look pretty?
Exactly. And it's, they just take it there. I mean, they just go there, and they're going to take it all the way.
Yep.
To whatever conclusion they feel is, is reasonable, and adults don't do that. And so I think I've been challenged in so many ways, and it has really changed the way I talk about myself. So I often say, I look great. I really like this shirt. I'm wearing the shirt's got a hole in it and the baby has smashed. So, okay, when you give them like a hard-boiled egg when they're on your back in the backpack carry, this bad life plan. But it's this idea of like projecting to my daughters, like, I like how I look. I am confident. I feel good about my body, and my husband does the same. And we try and instill that in our kids because they're hearing, they're listening, they're absorbing it all. And I hear that language then reflected back, and I hear how she'll get dressed up and she'll say like, I am so strong in this dress. We're like, okay, and
yes.
It has really made me think about appearance.
Absolutely. And even the way we try to talk about our appearance and our bodies from a strength-based perspective across the board. So I'll be picking up my baby, like, oh, my arms, they are so strong, they serve me so well. Or if my little one would run up and poke my squishy belly, oh, I'm so grateful for this belly that gave me my 3 babies, and just all of those, sorts of moments where you could really go one of 2 ways to be very intentional with which way you want to go.
Yes. And being so careful about the words you use and the way you do describe it, because it's just all being internalized. And I think, seeing that come to bear with our 3-year-old is, it's hysterical. So my husband walked downstairs the other day, and she goes up to him and she says, how's it been going lately, Dada? Is it because she's heard me talk to him in that way? Aww. And she understands kind of the tone of respect and empathy. How are you? And it's hysterical because it's, she doesn't understand sort of the gravity of what she's asking, but they are hearing the way we communicate. And so it's so important to my husband and I to demonstrate a lot of respect for each other and for our own bodies. And it has made me actually like my body more.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they
Body's doing good.
reflect it all. Okay, let's move on to our Q&A. I posted in the Sage Parenting Tribe on Facebook that we were going to chat about frugality today and intentional spending, and asked if anyone had any questions about it. Everyone had basically the same question, which was, how do we align a value of being frugal with other values like convenience and health without breaking under decision fatigue and guilt at every choice point?
Oh, how much time do we have?
You can use your Roomba example.
Oh my gosh, my Roomba and I are being a love affair. So I think this is a great question. And I always like to step back and say, I spend more money now that I have children than I did before I had children. That's an immutable fact. I don't like to pretend you can, be sort of as frugal as someone who is single or who doesn't have kids.
No.
But there are just so many opportunities to make all of these goals align. And I think you and I have talked about a lot of them throughout this interview. And I think there are so many touch points where I just encourage people to question what you're doing and whether or not it's actually serving those end goals. And then on a granular level, yeah, you do want to save time and you do want things to be convenient, but getting takeout Chinese food is going to be convenient, but it's not going to be healthy and it's not going to be inexpensive. So I often try to think about kind of that trifecta and where are the ways in which I can be healthy, inexpensive, and convenient. And so food prep is a great example. My husband and I prepare all of our food in advance, and then it's just in the fridge all week, and we just pull it out and feed us and the kids. And so that gives us healthy, organic, made from scratch meals. I'm not cooking every day. He's not cooking every night. So finding ways to ingrain efficiency into your routine. So we buy in bulk. We do buy largely organic. We buy grass-fed beef that our neighbors grow. This is not cheap stuff, but it's important to us to have good ingredients. I get organic milk, organic vegetables. Yeah. That's a priority. And then preparing that food is a priority. And so we don't fall victim to takeout. First of all, no one delivers to us out here. I mean, they really don't. But if they did, it's okay. We already have this healthy food in the fridge that we've prepared. Yeah. So set yourself up for success. This is not filet mignon over here. Okay. So it's I just make the hard boiled eggs all in one day and then they're just in there. I have a healthy sort of muffin bar recipe that I make in lieu of buying granola bars. I don't buy crackers. I don't buy granola bars. I don't buy snack food. I make these granola bars and I make them once every 2 weeks and then we eat them for 2 weeks. So it's stuff like that where it's you can enshrine all of these values at once. Spending time with your kids, have them help you make it. It will be funny, I promise. Buying food that's healthy, spending less money. And then moving off of, just the food example, with convenience, I have a Roomba. So this is a robotic vacuum, who I love, because the kids are on the floor. The floor is always messy. I was driving myself crazy sweeping and cleaning every day. So I decided that spending $260 on a Roomba was a good decision, because that's something that bears fruit for me all the time. I didn't spend $260 on a dress or on going out to dinner. Or on, lattes over the course of 6 months. I invested. I mean, I hate to say invested because it's a vacuum, but I bought something that truly brings me joy every day because it does a chore for me. It's also I have a dishwasher, because that brings me joy every day. It does work for me. So figuring out where you can ingrain long-term convenience. Because again, takeout Chinese food, that's not long-term convenience. That's a one-time quick fix. And you might need to do that sometimes, and that's fine. And so letting go of that guilt, because understanding that it is within the parameters of what your broader goals are.
Yes, that was a beautiful answer.
I hope that helps. And I know it's hard. It's a tough concept. And there's a lot more that we could dig into, but it does come back to that intentionality. And it also comes back to accepting that these goals are not competing. So just like we were talking about with the cleaning products, that is not competing with being environmentally friendly, with being frugal, or with saving time.
It's like Venn diagramming all of those values and then finding the intersecting points, finding the overlap. And as long as you're making decisions with intention, then there's guilt doesn't have to come along with them. I really find that guilt comes into play when I've made a choice not from a place of intention.
Yes. So like the 3 brownies that I ate this afternoon, that was not a place of intention. That was a place of frustration.
Oh, I'm jealous.
That was not a good decision that I made. Okay. But I can accept that and I can move on. And I think it's accepting, kind of like giving yourself that permission to say, this was an intentional choice. This was not. I made this out of stress and frustration, and that's okay. But knowing when those times are, and giving yourself the permission to spend money when it makes sense and to not spend money when you don't need to.
Absolutely. Be really in touch with that threshold or that crossover point where something is worth your time or not worth your time and energy.
And P.S., you really only have to do this once. It sounds overwhelming because I'm talking about all these facets of life. And it was kind of overwhelming to my husband and I at first, but we didn't do it all at once. It was like we sat down and figured out the groceries. All right. We figured out like the rotation of foods that we eat, that our kids eat. And now we just do it kind of on autopilot. It's like, okay, every week we get this many sweet potatoes. I roast them on this day. I chop them up. I freeze them. So you can freeze anything. I just tell you. Bread, cooked, everything, chicken. So the point being, it's not like I have to sit down and painstakingly do the grocery list every week. It's essential. It's in a Google document. It's like copy and paste.
Yeah.
And so find those efficiencies, ingrain them, and then just do them on repeat.
Yeah. Front load those choices and then you build in the efficiency. Then you're just following the plan.
Totally. And have a routine and a schedule. That is another big piece of how we're able to save money is we're not scrambling because we've planned ahead, because we have a routine.
All right. For everyone out there who wants to get in on that deep dive, the show notes can be found at sageparenting.com/podcast30, where you can also subscribe and get future show notes sent right to your inbox. And all of these yummy resources that Liz has shared with us will be there and will be linked. And let's see, you sent me a list and it looks like you covered all of them except Your Money or Your Life and Broke Millennial. So those are 2 books that you recommend too, right?
Yes. And Broke Millennial is actually Erin Lowry's book. Sorry, that's like the header, and then I think I gave you like the subtitle, which was... Anyway, so yes, it's the Broke Millennial series by Erin Lowry is a really great introduction to money.
Okay, Your Money or Your Life and Simple Path to Wealth are 2 of the books in my money reading list. I'm about to put out a blog post where I have my top 5 or 6 must-read self-study of personal finance post, and those 2 are on it. Those are both incredible. I've never read Broke Millennial, so I'll have to look into that one. So Liz, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking with us today about intentional spending. I really appreciate you giving up some of your time for all of us who want to learn from how you're choosing to live your life.
Well, thank you so much for having me.